Hi, I'm Victoria Freile from the Democrat and Chronicle, and I'm here today with Megan Crough. She is a marriage and family therapist, and we're talking a little bit about unsolicited parenting advice. I wrote an article that is in today's Democrat and Chronicle about receiving unsolicited parenting advice, where folks just kind of come up to you and say, hey, this is what you should be doing. So in the article, I chatted a bit with Megan. So hi, welcome Megan.
Hi, thank you.
So yeah, what would be your advice if somebody would, I mean, obviously you're a parent as well, but what would your advice be for someone who is dealing with this and coming up to you and saying, hey, you need to do this?
It's tricky, right? So if you have an infant, you haven't been a parent very long. If you have a 15-year-old, then you've probably been there, done that, so you can roll with it a little bit more. But I think the two things that I would always say are a good idea are take it with the best possible interpretation of what they're saying and breathe, so that you have your own, so you can think, right? So you have some power in the situation, because probably there's something going wrong. People don't offer their advice if everything's just going along smoothly.
Right, and I know, at least in my situation, people will kind of look at me and be like, oh, hey, I remember that. I remember living through that, and here's what I did.
Right.
So,
and that's a really nice way to, I think, get into that conversation. And that kind of opens the door for you too, like, oh, really? Because I had a parent say to me once, how do I get my kid to leave the playground without screaming?
That's a good question, actually.
And I said, somebody told me this little pearl of wisdom, which was to give the 5-minute warning. And my daughter, she didn't care. She was fine with it. My son absolutely every time needed the 5-minute warning. And then he was fine, and it was a major quality of life improvement for our family. And I was like, that was so simple. Didn't know that, though. Didn't get the download.
Right. Right. And I'm sure, I mean, obviously, I'm a new parent. I don't know everything. I know I don't know everything. I don't know a lot of things. So there are definitely times where I reach out and ask people for advice. And ask, oh, okay, what would you do in this situation? How are you handling it? Right.
And actually, that doesn't change. You know? No, my sister's has 3 teenagers, and she and I still will bounce ideas sometimes. And you know, it goes from diapering to driving, and then college selection, and are they drinking too much at college? Because, you know, parents are trying to have more open relationships with kids, and so they share things, and then you have to respond intelligently, hopefully. And, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't imagine it ever ends, which is fine.
It really doesn't end.
Is there a way that you would handle it differently if it's a loved one coming up to you versus a stranger sort of stopping you in the middle of, say, Wegmans?
Definitely. It's because I think our defenses are lower, usually, not always, with family members. Okay. Some family members are just those people who are going to push your buttons and just are maybe wanting to stir up trouble to kind of distract from what they're doing.
Okay.
So in those situations, yeah, you're going to have a different countenance, you know, as that comes in. People in Wegmans, I would say that's always going to be a situation where there's something that's amiss, right? Either your kid is screaming, they're grabbing things off the shelves, I don't know, they're running around loose. I mean, which is, I was just trying to think. I used to send my kids to get things in the grocery store as part of this reading, independence, kind of self-sufficiency, building confidence thing, and it worked out great. But I know a lot of parents who would say that's scary for them, that would be too permissive. They would be very fearful.
Right, where is your child gone, and how could you send them off alone?
Right, now they're not 3 when I'm doing that,
right.
But really, I mean, they were reading, early readers, so probably 6, 7, 8. My kids were really outgoing and confident, though. So
well, they had a mission to help you in the process too. Plus, it was one less thing you had to pick up.
Right.
So that helps.
And it kind of sets an expectation of this is how we do behave in a grocery store. Although I have to say, I bribed them with donuts for years. So they actually loved going to the grocery store.
That's really smart. That's really smart. Is there anything that you really shouldn't do if somebody comes up to you and say, whether it's a family member or a stranger, is there anything that you really should not do if you find somebody critiquing how you parent?
I err on the side of kind of emotional intelligence in general. So bringing things down. So when somebody is offering their advice or they're showing you their stress, okay? So you can either match them, meet them with their stress, you can one-up them and really get righteous, or you can try to bring it down.
Sometimes you get a little emotional. It's hard to do some of those, for sure. Depending on what they say.
When we feel judged, that is a button for most people.
Understandably.
Is feeling like now we've just raised the bar of stress in the situation. And that's not pleasant for anybody.
Well, on that note, why do you think it bothers us to get advice?
Well, I like in the article the woman who said she was coming out of church with her daughter, I'm assuming probably an infant, probably a little one. Somebody said to her, you should really have a blanket over the baby. And it took her all day to kind of process why that bothered her so much. And she very, with sweet vulnerability said, I really should have had her covered.
Right.
And so I really appreciate that. And I think that's part of why we get triggered, is if we might have a sense that there was wisdom coming at us and we didn't handle it well. Like, I don't know how she handled that, but I would say she probably didn't handle it beautifully, gracefully, because then she wouldn't have been stressing about it for half a day.
True. I found myself doing that yesterday, and nobody said anything to me like, please put a blanket on your baby, but I went running yesterday morning and it was a little chilly. I pulled a blanket out, went to put it on him, and then got distracted. Got home after running 4 miles, and his little hands and his little feet were cold, and I'm like, oh, what did he do to you? I'm sorry, child. And he was fine the whole time. He didn't complain.
It's August.
It's August.
So he wasn't going to get hypothermia.
It was only 60 degrees, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I probably should have put that blanket on you. But, and had someone said something to me, I probably would have gone, oh.
And I think you're pointing out something really good, which is when our kids are not able to advocate for themselves, right? He's learning English still, right? So he didn't say, hey, Mom, what about me? Cold hands.
That blanket you put underneath me, have it on me.
Yeah. So I think there's this vulnerability we all have of wanting to be really good parents and tuned into our kids. Yeah. And every time we miss that mark, there's a little bit of, fail. Like this kind of shame. And it's okay. Shame has its place.
Yes.
I don't believe in a shame-free world. I believe in a healthy shame kind of world. And that's a moment where you'll go, next time, the blanket's got to stay with the stroller or whatever. Next
time I'm going to remember. Yeah. And I often quote my mother here because she always will say that, she won't make the same mistakes that her parents made. She'll make different ones. Yeah. And she totally did. So, and I guarantee you I'm making different mistakes than she made. Perhaps they're the same ones my grandparents made because I don't know.
Right.
But learning from them is really what matters, and that works rather well. How do you suggest one would deal with pushy folks who might just be really aggressive in how they offer some advice and just say, oh, you need to be doing it this way. Why aren't you doing it this way?
Well, again, it depends if it's a family member or a stranger. A stranger, I would just relocate oneself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get out of the situation as soon as you can. And as gracefully as you can. Again, try just not to escalate, right? When somebody's triggered, it's so easy to escalate.
Yeah.
With a family member who's being really pushy, you're probably going to have to take it to the next level, which is to have a conversation like, I am sure you mean really well as you're giving this advice, and yet it feels kind of judgy. Can we talk about that?
Right. And just saying that to them may help them understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and if it doesn't slow their roll, then probably nothing you're going to do would. Yeah. So you have to then be strategic.
Yes.
And maybe just say to them, like, certain things are just off the table then.
That's a good idea. I think we all have a great aunt like that. At least I do. Means wonderfully well. She'll do it from anything from parenting to cooking to how you set the table, to her grandchildren's
Yes.
significant others or lack thereof.
See, that's the thing, is when you have a reputation as just
Yes.
an opinionated, pushy, great aunt,
Right.
you can kind of get away with it a little bit more.
You can. There's still the brownie incident of 2015. Big, thick brownies. She cut them really thin, and then she kind of looked at the whole pan and went, "Oh, I ruined everything, didn't I?" Kind of, yeah. Please don't cut them. Thanks.
The brownie incident.
They were brownies. It didn't matter. But at the same time, I'm like, no, it's a plate of crumbs. Thanks. It was brownies, but
It's cute.
we all have one. But I'm trying to think. What else? Well, while I was talking to one of the women in the article, she was telling me, and she usually lets everything completely roll off her back. She doesn't really think too much about it. She just smiles and nods if someone offers their advice. And she was telling me when she was walking with her kids, her son, who's 2-ish, had picked up a piece of like bubble wrap kind of plastic and started running down the road with it, and she decided not to chase him because she didn't want to chase him accidentally into traffic. She's like, not a fight, I'm gonna win,
right.
Let's just not have this battle. And the woman pulled over, told her repeatedly, you should not be with that, and she smiled and grinned and said, okay, thanks. But at the same time, what she kept saying to me was that, or what she mentioned to me was that the woman didn't know what she was doing. She could have been teaching her son to pick up litter.
Right.
Which I totally can relate to, because you don't know what somebody else is going through or what their life is about or what their circumstances are before you judge whatever it is that they're doing. Be it, that mom with the 6-month-old who runs with her every 5 minutes. I mean, you don't know how she has the ability to do that. You just don't know.
Right. Right.
So I forget where I was going with that.
So the plastic question, the
Right.
one with the plastic, was it kind of like how to deal with her?
Yeah, well, she was talking a little bit about, for her, it wasn't something that she was going to let bother her, but at the same time, it did bother her because the woman who was very aggressive just didn't know her circumstances and didn't know why she was letting her son run around with plastic.
Right. And I almost think that I have a sense that that's not actually a parenting question. It's more about when we are just vulnerable humans out there in the world and some other human that we don't have a relationship with comes in aggressively to our experience and expresses themselves. Yeah. That's always a little stressful and threatening.
A little hard.
A little hard. And it kind of brings us back to being the community that we want to live in, right? Yeah. So, and that's why I say, I kind of have a policy of just bring it down. Let's just try to bring it down. Yeah. Because that's the community I want to live in. And when I hear conflicts out in the world that start going this way, I start going that way. Yeah. I mean, as long as it's not in my office. They don't like it when I leave in the middle of a conflict.
I can understand that. That's very good advice.
But
excellent.
Yeah, I feel like we have to, that Gandhi quote about being the change you want to see in the world. That's what we have to do as parents, as community members, etc.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and
you're welcome.
Sharing your advice with us.
And
yes, you guys can catch the article at democratandchronicle.com.